On a tranquil Sunday afternoon, an unexpected knock on the bathroom door altered the course of my day, and I was unprepared for the events that would unfold. It was an ordinary Sunday, the type that lulls one into a deceptive sense of tranquility. The sun hung high in the sky, casting gentle rays through the curtains of our modest suburban residence, creating a warmth that made everything feel somewhat languid. Sundays had always been my designated time to relax, to take a break from the week, and to either delve into my thoughts or immerse myself in a video game. However, this particular Sunday was different, though I did not recognize it at the outset. After lunch, I made my way to the bathroom, intending to spend some time there. You know how it is when one seeks a moment of solitude. I enjoyed scrolling through my phone, perhaps playing a game or two, relishing the peace. The bathroom had always served as my refuge, a space where I could disconnect from the outside world and take a breath. Little did I know that what was meant to be a typical, uneventful afternoon was on the verge of transformation. As I sat there, engrossed in my phone, I heard faint footsteps echoing down the hallway. Initially, I paid little attention. Our home was often filled with various sounds, the creaking of floorboards, the hum of the refrigerator, and the distant murmur of the television in the living room. Yet, there was something distinct about these footsteps, soft yet intentional, halting just outside the bathroom door. Then came the knock. It was not an urgent summons, nothing that demanded immediate attention, but it was peculiar enough to make me pause. My mother's voice followed, sounding overly cheerful. "Hey, sweetheart, you in there?" I frowned and glanced at the closed door. "Yeah, Mom, I'll be out in a minute," I replied. Her voice remained bright, perhaps a bit too bright. "Take your time." I heard her footsteps retreat down the hallway, and I returned to my phone, attempting to dismiss the unusual interaction. My mother was not the kind of person to check on me while I was in the bathroom. We were not a family that required constant updates about our whereabouts or activities. However, for some inexplicable reason, she felt compelled to stop by and greet me through the door today. It was unusual, yet I deemed it not worth overanalyzing, or so I thought. Minutes passed, and the silence returned to the house, interrupted only by the occasional sound of the wind against the windows. I attempted to relax, but the knock lingered in my thoughts. My mother was behaving differently. Although she had not acted inappropriately, the tone of her voice had struck me as peculiar. I shook my head, trying to dispel the growing sense of unease. Perhaps she was simply in a good mood, I reasoned, or maybe she intended to discuss something later, or perhaps she was merely checking in. Yet, despite the various explanations I conjured, I could not entirely dismiss the oddity of the situation. Just as I began to feel more at ease, I heard her footsteps approaching once more, this time slower and more tentative. My heart raced for reasons I could not articulate. She stood outside the door again, asking softly, "Is everything okay in there?" Her voice was quieter, almost uncertain. Yeah," I replied, my voice wavering slightly. "I'll be out soon." There was a pause, a moment of silence that stretched uncomfortably before she responded, "All right," but she did not move. I could sense her presence just outside the door, and my heart began to race. I was unsure why I felt so anxious, but the tension in the air was undeniable. I stood up and glanced at my reflection in the mirror. I appeared unchanged, same tousled hair, same hoodie, same everything. Yet, the atmosphere felt different, heavy and unsettling. After what seemed like an eternity, I finally heard her footsteps retreating down the hallway. I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding, my body relaxing slightly, but the unease remained. I concluded my time in the bathroom, splashing water on my face in an attempt to alleviate the peculiar tension that had enveloped me. The coolness of the water against my skin was refreshing, yet it did little to clear my thoughts. With a towel secured around my waist, I opened the bathroom door and stepped into the hallway. Everything appeared as it always did, the familiar photographs adorning the walls and the gentle light streaming through the windows. However, I could not shake the unsettling feeling that something was amiss, as if the atmosphere in the house had subtly altered. As I walked down the hallway, my bare feet made soft sounds against the hardwood floor. I passed my mother's room, the door closed as it typically was, and proceeded to my own room at the end of the corridor. Upon reaching the doorknob, I hesitated. Something caught my attention. The door was slightly ajar, just enough to quicken my heartbeat. My mother never entered my room without permission. I cautiously pushed the door open, half expecting to find her inside, but the room was vacant. Everything was in order. My bed was neatly made, my clothes were piled on the chair in the corner, and my desk was a chaotic assortment of papers and miscellaneous items. Yet, there was an additional detail that eluded my understanding. The faint aroma of her perfume lingered in the air. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but sufficient to affirm my suspicion that she had been there. But why? What had she been doing? I sat on the edge of my bed, my thoughts racing. Perhaps she had merely come in to tidy up, or maybe she needed something from my room. Yet, that reasoning felt flawed. She had never done such a thing before, and her silence when she knocked on the bathroom door earlier only deepened the mystery. I reclined on the bed, gazing at the ceiling, striving to comprehend the situation. The more I pondered, the more questions arose. WH. Why had she entered my room without informing me? Why had she lingered outside the bathroom? And why did it seem as though there was something she was withholding from me? As the afternoon progressed, the narrative did not conclude there. I found myself repeatedly reflecting on the events that had transpired, attempting to comprehend the peculiar tension that had emerged between us. There was an underlying issue that eluded my understanding, and despite my desire to dismiss it as inconsequential, I could not rid myself of the impression that significant changes were imminent. The subsequent days following that unusual encounter in the bathroom were far from ordinary. A palpable shift had occurred in the dynamic between my mother and me, one that I struggled to articulate. It was not as if we had experienced a falling out or a major disagreement. Rather, an invisible boundary seemed to have been crossed, yet neither of us acknowledged its existence. I was uncertain about how to address it, or if I should even attempt to do so, but the tension, subtle yet undeniable, persisted as if it were anticipating a catalyst. It began with minor observations, such as the way she would observe me a bit too intently whenever I entered a room. I would catch her gaze, only for her to quickly avert her eyes, feigning engagement with another task. Additionally, she appeared to be present more frequently, always finding reasons to occupy the same space as me. It felt as though every time I sought solitude, she would materialize, sitting in the living room while I was there, cooking in the kitchen when I went for a snack, or even folding laundry on the couch while I played video games. Initially, I attempted to dismiss it as mere coincidence, perhaps believing she simply wished to spend more time together or had something weighing on her mind that she struggled to express. However, as these occurrences continued, it became increasingly evident that they were not merely random. An unspoken issue lingered between us, one that neither of us dared to address. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching television, the soft illumination of the screen flickered in the dimly lit living room. The only sounds were the gentle hum of the program and the occasional clinking of ice in her glass. I attempted to concentrate on the show, yet my thoughts kept returning to her proximity. She was sitting closer than usual, so near that I could feel the warmth emanating from her body. My heart raced, and I found myself puzzled by the intensity of the moment. She spoke little, offering only sporadic comments about the show, but each word carried a weight, as if there were deeper meanings behind them. I kept my gaze fixed on the screen, yet my mind was preoccupied with the diminishing space between us. My skin tingled with every brush of her arm against mine, and I became acutely aware of her every slight movement. As the credits rolled and the show concluded, a wave of relief washed over me. Perhaps it was the tension of our closeness that had become overwhelming. I reached for the remote to turn off the television, but before I could act, she broke the silence. "You've really grown up," she remarked, her voice soft and contemplative. I hesitated, the remote still in my grasp, uncertain of how to reply. "Yeah, I guess," I mumbled, stealing a glance at her. She was looking at me in a manner that made my stomach churn, as if she were seeing me anew, not merely as her son, but as someone older. A long silence ensued, one that made my palms sweat. I was at a loss for words, feeling that remaining silent was not the right choice. However, before I could formulate a response, she surprised me with an unexpected action. She gradually extended her hand and placed it over mine. The touch was soft, yet it sent a surge of electricity coursing through me. My breath hitched in my throat, and my initial reaction was to withdraw, but I found myself unable to do so. I remained there, immobilized, my heart pounding as her fingers gently curled around mine. "I am proud of you," she murmured, her voice barely breaking the stillness of the room. Her hand lingered for a moment longer before she slowly withdrew it, leaving a chilling emptiness where her warmth had been. I finally exhaled, though my thoughts were in disarray. "Thank you," I managed to say, though the words felt insubstantial. My gaze returned to the television, but I was no longer truly watching. My mind raced, attempting to comprehend the moment that had just transpired. I sensed her eyes on me, tracing every contour of my face, yet I could not bring myself to meet her gaze after that encounter. She abruptly stood, shattering the silence that had enveloped us like a heavy shroud. "I am going to bed," she stated, her voice reverting to its usual tone, as if nothing had occurred, as if we had not just crossed an uncharted boundary. "Good night," I replied, still fixated on the screen, grappling with my thoughts. Once I heard her footsteps retreating down the hallway, I released a breath I had not realized I was holding. My mind was a chaotic blend of confusion, curiosity, and an unacknowledged feeling I was reluctant to confront. Why had I remained still? Why had I not withdrawn my hand? And why did it seem as though this was merely the beginning? The subsequent days were undeniably awkward. I made every effort to avoid being alone with her, concocting excuses to remain in my room or to leave the house whenever possible. Yet, despite my attempts to evade her, there was no escaping the situation. The atmosphere between us was charged, reminiscent of a looming storm that I could not shake from my thoughts. I often recalled that moment on the couch, the sensation of her hand resting on mine, and the intimate tone of her voice. Then, one evening, the situation intensified. It was late, and I was attempting to complete some homework when she knocked on my door. My heart raced as I called out for her to enter. She stepped inside, appearing somewhat hesitant, which was atypical for her. "Hey," she said softly, lingering in the doorway as if uncertain about fully entering. "Can you help me with something in the garage?" I paused, contemplating the implications of being alone with her, which felt like venturing into precarious territory. However, I found it difficult to refuse. "Sure," I replied, rising to follow her down the hallway. The garage was chilly and poorly lit, illuminated only by a solitary overhead bulb. She guided me to a pile of boxes, explaining her need to organize them, but her voice seemed distant. My thoughts were consumed by the palpable tension in the air as we stood side by side, sorting through the boxes. Despite not physically moving closer, the space between us felt as though it was diminishing, as if an unspoken force was drawing us together. I stole a glance at her, and for a fleeting moment, our eyes locked. In that instant, something changed. I noticed a vulnerability in her gaze that made my stomach churn. Without warning, she stepped closer, her hand brushing against mine, sending a surge of electricity through me. I froze, torn between the urge to retreat and the overwhelming desire to remain. My mind urged me to pull away, to say something, to halt this moment, yet I remained still. The silence hung thick and heavy, almost stifling, until she finally broke it with a voice so soft it was barely audible. "I've been thinking about you a lot." My heart raced, and I was at a loss for words. I opened my mouth, desperate to say something, anything, but the words just wouldn't come. I felt like I couldn't breathe or think straight. Then, in a heartbeat, she leaned in, closing the gap between us, and I could feel her warm breath on my skin. My mind went completely blank as her lips hovered just a breath away from mine. In that moment, everything else faded into the background. I knew it was wrong, but there was no turning back now. The next few moments felt surreal, like time had slowed down, trapping me in this strange space where everything was happening too fast and yet not fast enough. Her face was so close, her breath warm against me, and for the first time, I was unsure of what was real. My thoughts were a tangled mess of emotions I couldn't untangle. All I knew was that something was about to change forever, and there was no stopping it. Her eyes were locked onto mine, searching for a sign, a hint of permission that I wasn't sure I could give. But before I could process anything, her lips met mine, soft, tentative, but undeniably there. It was unlike anything I had ever experienced. My body tensed as the reality of the moment hit me, but I didn't pull away. I couldn't. There was something magnetic, something unspoken that held me in place. It was just a fleeting second, but in that moment, the world around us faded away. The garage, the boxes, the chill in the air, none of it mattered anymore. All that existed was the sensation of her lips against mine, gentle yet overwhelming. An unexpected realization washed over me as she withdrew, her eyes wide and brimming with an emotion I struggled to identify, perhaps fear, confusion, or even regret. Yet, before I could articulate my thoughts or comprehend the moment, she kissed me again. This time, there was no hesitation. The kiss was deeper and more intense, transforming everything into a more vivid and perilous reality. My heart raced, pounding so loudly in my ears that I was convinced she could hear it as well. Despite this, I did not pull away. Instead, I leaned into the kiss, my mind swirling as I attempted to grasp the significance of what was unfolding. It felt as though an invisible barrier between us had been shattered, leaving no possibility of retreat. The intensity of the moment escalated, our breaths quickening with each passing second. There was a peculiar urgency in the way she clung to me, as if she feared losing this connection as much as I did. However, there was no opportunity to reflect on those feelings. I was engulfed in a tempest of emotions that had suddenly overtaken me. Without warning, we stumbled backward out of the garage and into the house, enveloped in silence that spoke volumes. It was as if we both understood what lay ahead, yet neither of us possessed the courage to voice it. We found ourselves in the living room, the very place where this journey had begun. The faint glow from the television created elongated shadows throughout the room, enhancing the surreal atmosphere. My heart raced as she approached, her gaze fixed intently on mine. The tension in the air was thick and tangible, as if the entire world was pausing, anticipating the unfolding events. Her hand found mine once more, our fingers intertwining in a manner that felt both unfamiliar and yet oddly comforting. A fleeting moment of uncertainty flickered in her eyes, but it dissipated almost instantly. She leaned in again, her lips meeting mine with a newfound urgency that had not been present before. Our bodies pressed together, entwined in a way that made us lose ourselves in that instant. It felt different now, more intense, more assured. Time seemed to lose its meaning. I could not determine how long we remained there, enveloped in each other, caught in a moment that felt both impossible and destined. There was no room for thought or rationality, only raw emotion. Each breath and movement propelled us deeper into uncharted territory, yet neither of us hesitated. Eventually, we found ourselves on the couch, the soft fabric beneath us contrasting sharply with the intensity of our connection. Everything was happening so rapidly, yet it felt as though time had slowed, distorting around us. Her lips remained on mine, and I sensed the weight of unspoken words pressing down upon us. This was real, and it was no longer something we could simply walk away from. Yet, even as the moment unfolded, a part of me struggled to grasp how we had arrived at this point. How had everything escalated so swiftly? I was aware that this was wrong, but in the heat of the moment, such thoughts faded into insignificance. What truly mattered was the way her touch ignited my skin, the electric thrill that accompanied every kiss and caress. There was no possibility of retreat. We had crossed an irrevocable boundary, one that neither of us could reverse. Yet, in that instant, it did not seem like a misstep. It felt as though we had been skirting around this moment for days, perhaps even weeks, and now that it had arrived, there was no turning back. I could not ascertain how long we remained in that state, enraptured by one another. Time appeared to lose its significance. It could have been mere minutes, or it might have stretched into hours. All I knew was that when I finally withdrew, gasping for breath, my mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, yet none could overshadow the magnetic attraction I still felt toward her. She gazed at me, her eyes reflecting a complex array of emotions that I struggled to decipher. For a brief moment, we simply looked at one another, both attempting to regain our composure and comprehend the significance of what had just transpired. However, before I could articulate anything, before I could even formulate the appropriate words, she kissed me once more. This kiss was unlike the previous ones. It was gentler, slower, imbued with a depth that transcended mere physical desire. It felt as if she were attempting to convey something unspoken, striving to help me grasp what neither of us dared to voice aloud. In that moment, I sensed it too. Her hands found their way to my waist, drawing me nearer as the kiss intensified, the atmosphere around us heavy with the significance of the occasion. We moved in a quiet harmony, the outside world fading away as we surrendered to one another. It was not hurried, but rather infused with a tenderness that quickened my heartbeat, a connection that felt both known and novel. The warmth of her body against mine was both grounding and comforting, and for the first time, I felt truly at peace. In a moment, I found myself entirely immersed in the intimacy of the experience. We remained silent thereafter, as no words could adequately convey the significance of what had transpired. The emotions enveloped us like a tempest, and we sat together, the silence between us laden with the unspoken thoughts we chose not to express. As the evening progressed, the intensity of the moment gradually diminished, giving way to a serene stillness. I could feel her head resting gently on my shoulder, her breathing calm and rhythmic. For the first time in hours, my mind began to find peace. Yet, even amidst this tranquility, I understood that nothing would revert to its previous state. We had crossed an irrevocable boundary, entering a realm neither of us had anticipated. Although the night concluded in silence, the unarticulated truth loomed heavily between us. This was not the conclusion, far from it. Consequences awaited us, as they always do. However, in that moment, as we sat together in the soft glow of the living room, none of that seemed significant. What truly mattered was the undeniable shift that had occurred, a change that precluded any possibility of returning to the past. The remainder of the night unfolded in a haze of quiet interludes, a tumult of emotions beyond our control. We refrained from discussing the events that had unfolded, yet it was clear that something profound had taken place, and we had allowed it to happen. There was no rationalizing the surge of feelings or the choices we had made. We simply coexisted in the silence, allowing the weight of the night to envelop us. Both of us were acutely aware that the dawn would bring its own challenges and questions we were unprepared to confront. But for now, in the stillness of the night, all that mattered was this moment, all that mattered was us. The following morning arrived all too quickly. I awoke to the gentle light streaming through the curtains, illuminating the serene living room where I had spent the night. The stillness of the space stood in stark contrast to the emotional turmoil of the previous evening, deepening the reality of my situation. My stepmother was no longer present. At some point, she must have departed, yet the weight of her absence lingered like a shadow over me. I sat up slowly, the events of the night flooding back like an overwhelming tide, inescapable and intense. Everything had shifted between us, and there was no denying it. I could not pretend that the past had not occurred, nor could I act as if life would revert to its former state. The silence in the house felt almost oppressive. I rose and made my way to the kitchen, half hoping to find her there, perhaps preparing breakfast or waiting for me as if nothing had transpired. However, the room was vacant, and the house felt hollow. For a fleeting moment, I was uncertain whether this emptiness was a relief or merely an additional layer of tension. I poured myself a glass of water, the coolness doing little to soothe the turmoil within me. My thoughts raced, a chaotic jumble that I could not seem to organize. What had transpired? What would happen next? The questions were unending, and I had no answers. It was not long before I heard her footsteps in the hallway, soft yet unmistakable. My heart raced as I turned to see her standing there. Her expression was momentarily inscrutable, and neither of us uttered a word. The atmosphere surrounding us was dense with the burden of unexpressed thoughts, the tension unmistakable. "Good morning," she finally spoke, her voice soft and almost tentative. "Morning," I replied, my throat parched, the word escaping more strained than I had intended. I yearned to articulate more, to inquire about her thoughts, yet the words eluded me. Everything felt too raw, too delicate. We remained there, suspended in time, both uncertain of how to navigate the aftermath of recent events, as if we were trapped in a moment we could not transcend. The silence lingered, each passing second weighing heavier than the last. At last, she shattered the stillness. "I've been reflecting on last night," she stated, her tone steady, though her eyes revealed the uncertainty she grappled with regarding what had transpired. I swallowed hard, my chest constricting. This was the conversation I had dreaded, yet it was unavoidable. We could not simply disregard it or pretend that nothing had altered. "Yeah," I managed to respond, my voice barely a whisper. "Me too." A lengthy pause ensued, and I could see the conflict in her eyes, the struggle to articulate something that defied comprehension. "I don't know how we arrived at this point," she confessed, her voice wavering slightly. "I don't understand what any of this signifies." I was equally perplexed. All I recognized was that something had irrevocably changed between us, a shift that could not be reversed. "Neither do I replied candidly, "but we cannot act as if nothing occurred." She nodded slowly, her gaze fixed on mine. "I know," she whispered. "I don't want to." The acknowledgement hung heavily in the air, laden with significance. We stood on the precipice of something unknown, something we did not fully grasp, yet there was no retreat. The boundary had been crossed, and whether we wished to or not, we had to confront whatever lay ahead. I find myself at a loss for what to do next, my voice trembling as I express my uncertainty. "Everything feels altered," she sighed, running her fingers through her hair. "It is indeed different," she concurred, "but we will find a way through this, we must." Although her words were intended to provide solace, they did little to quell the turmoil within me. There was no guide for this situation, no means to foresee what lay ahead. All I understood was that we had entered a realm far more intricate than either of us had expected. The day unfolded in a peculiar fog, as we both engaged in routine tasks, cooking, cleaning, and feigning productivity, yet the tension between us remained palpable. It was as if we had silently agreed to avoid discussing the events that had transpired, at least for the time being. We were both too apprehensive to confront the issue, fearful of its implications. However, as the hours passed, it became increasingly evident that we could not evade it indefinitely. The gravity of our situation loomed over us like a dark cloud, impossible to disregard. Every glance and minor interaction was laden with the memory of the previous night, and neither of us knew how to move beyond it. Later that evening, we found ourselves once more in the living room, seated on opposite ends of the couch. The silence was overwhelming, the atmosphere thick with unexpressed thoughts. I could no longer endure the quiet. I needed to speak, to shatter the stillness before it consumed me. "I am uncertain about our next steps," I declared, my voice piercing the silence. "We cannot continue to act as if everything is normal, for it is not." She hesitated before responding, her gaze fixed on an unseen point in the distance. When she finally spoke, her tone was gentle, almost resigned. "I understand," she replied softly, "but I do not know how to resolve this." Her words struck me more profoundly than I anticipated. The realization that there might be no remedy for our situation, that what had occurred could have irrevocably altered everything, was a sobering thought. I was reluctant to contemplate the implications, unwilling to confront the reality of our circumstances. There may be no returning to the way things once were. I acknowledged this, my voice barely rising above a whisper. She nodded, her expression contemplative. "Perhaps we just need some time," she proposed, suggesting we take a moment to reflect and determine our desires. I was uncertain whether time would provide the answers we sought, but it was the only option available to us at that moment. "Yes," I agreed softly. Once again, silence enveloped us, yet this time it carried a different weight, a sense of finality and mutual understanding that we could not progress until we had taken the necessary time to process our situation. It was a temporary interlude, a chance to pause and gather our thoughts before confronting whatever lay ahead. As the evening unfolded, we remained seated together, yet felt worlds apart. The chasm between us had never seemed so profound, yet an unspoken bond persisted, a thread connecting us despite our uncertainty about its destination. Eventually, she rose, breaking the stillness once more. "I am going to bed," she said softly, her voice tinged with a fatigue that transcended mere physical tiredness. "Me too," I replied, fully aware that sleep would be the last thing on my mind. She hesitated for a moment, as if she wished to express something further, but ultimately offered a small nod before disappearing down the hallway, leaving me alone with my reflections. I remained seated for an extended period after her departure, the weight of the day pressing heavily upon me. I was uncertain about what the future held or how we would navigate this unfamiliar reality. However, one truth was clear: nothing would ever return to its previous state. We had crossed a threshold that could not be undone, venturing into a realm more complex than either of us had anticipated, and now we were left to confront the repercussions. The silence of the house enveloped me like a thick blanket, and for the first time in a long while, I experienced a profound sense of peace. Next story: my stepmother's unfulfilled desire.